In my lab now, we can control aging very precisely at will. We can speed it up as fast as we want in an animal and even reverse it.
Hello, everyone. Today, we're delving into a subject that has intrigued thinkers and researchers for ages: the scientific explanation behind aging. We'll be exploring the wisdom of Dr. David Sinclair, a prominent figure in the realm of aging and longevity research. If you're interested in understanding the processes of aging and potential ways to decelerate it, stick around.
We can improve our health and our long-term survival at any age.
Dr. David Sinclair, a genetics professor at Harvard Medical School and the author of the revolutionary book Lifespan, Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to, is dedicated to unraveling the molecular and genetic processes that underpin aging. His trailblazing research is laying the groundwork for potential therapies that could counteract aging.
So aging is now controllable. We have the technology to control how fast we age. We can measure that, slow it down, and even reverse it. This has never happened in human history before. And one of the reasons that we're doing this today is to make sure everybody knows that this is coming, because it's going to fundamentally change the course of human history. Well, if we look at the animal kingdom, first of all, there are plenty of species that live that long. There is no reason why we can't do what they do. And if we learn how they do it, we can apply that to ourselves. And what's important to realize is that there's a reason why that is. Animals that don't have a lot of predation, whales, mollusks, sharks, mole rats underground, they don't get eaten, so they can put their energy into building a long-lasting body, and actually, as a consequence, they reproduce slowly as well. But what's important is that you can build a longer-lived body, and we can do that too. We can engineer ourselves, we can learn from these animals by studying what makes them live so long. So what we can learn from those species is that you don't have to get old. We're all built from the same stuff. We've got DNA, proteins, RNA. We can engineer ourselves to be that long-lived. If we didn't have predation for the next 10 million years, we would live for centuries. We just don't have time to wait for evolution to take hold. We can engineer ourselves the way evolution would make us live longer. Well, these species that don't have a lot of predation live a long time, but also in these extreme environments, they're turning on their body's defenses against aging. And we can do that to ourselves. It's a concept called hormesis. We're essentially upright whales. That sounds crazy, but at the molecular level, if you look at the biochemistry, we're only separated by 40 million years, which is a blink of an eye in geological time. We actually could live as long as whales. There's not that much difference between us. What's interesting is we now have the genome of these animals, and we can see that they have multiple copies of what we call longevity genes, some of which we discovered when I was in my 20s. These are genes that protect the body. Longevity genes actually get turned on by adversity, and there are ways we can tweak them. But whales naturally have multiple copies and higher levels of these longevity protective mechanisms, and the bristlecone pine has just whopping amounts. But the important thing is that when you study other organisms, whether it's a banana or a yeast cell or a worm or a fly, we can learn lessons about biology, and especially about aging. We can learn more about aging from a yeast cell than we can about Alzheimer's or cancer. And aging is one of these universal things. And what really is remarkable that we've learned in my lab over the last 20 years is that the same genes that control aging in yeast work in worms and flies, mice, and even humans. That's a big deal. We didn't know that 30 years ago. Now we know that there's a fundamental set of genes that controls how fast we live, and then we can also exploit that to slow down our own aging now. And as we'll get to later, we can use that knowledge to even reverse the aging process. So there are various categories. There are hundreds of longevity genes that are known, but they fall into three main buckets. The first one, it's called mTOR. It's a little m for mammal, and TOR, target of rapamycin. So mTOR is a longevity gene that makes a protein that senses amino acids. So when you eat a big steak, mTOR activity actually is activated, and mTOR now says, okay, I've got lots of protein, I'm going to make muscle, I'm going to burn energy. And that's why when you eat a steak, you build up muscle more than if you don't eat a lot of protein. What you want is to have mTOR levels low, to inhibit the mTOR. And when you have low mTOR activity, that's when you get the longest lifespan. Mice that are given a drug called rapamycin, which is used to suppress the immune system in patients, but you can take low doses as a human or give it in low doses to a mouse, those mice live dramatically longer. Even if you give them rapamycin when they're 20 months of age, which is a really old mouse, that'd be like a 75-year-old human, they still live longer. So low activity of mTOR is a signal that times are tough. You don't have enough food, hunker down, build a stronger body, survive, and the outcome of that is longer life for these mice. But it turns out it's not just for mice. You give rapamycin to a yeast cell or a fly or a worm, they also live longer. So you can tap in with these drugs into this universal longevity program, one of which is mTOR. I think solving aging is going to be easier than solving cancer and heart disease because aging is fundamentally conserved. We can make rapid progress extending the lifespan of little yeast cells, worms with chemicals, and then put them into humans. And hopefully we'll see they'll work the same way like rapamycin seems to do. But the point here is that aging is not that complicated once you understand the genes that control it, and then the fundamental causes of aging as well. Bucket 2 is AMPK. It's called AMP activated kinase. We want to activate AMPK. So how do you do that? You eat less, you fast, and that'll turn on AMPK. It'll do a few things. It'll make your body more sensitive to your insulin, suck the sugar out of your bloodstream, which can be toxic if it stays high. But it also ramps up the energy producing centers of the body, these membrane-filled bags, which are actually ancient bacteria living in our bodies called mitochondria. Well, it's been studied by thousands of labs, but the one that's most interesting, I think, right now is to see if a drug that activates AMPK extends human lifespan, slows down aging. And that's Nir Barzilai, my good friend down in New York at Albert Einstein College of Medicine. Yeah, metformin's really interesting because it's super safe. It's one of the safest drugs ever known. It's on the World Health Organization's list of essential medicines for humanity. In much of the world, it's cost pennies. Essentially, they want it. In those countries, they just want you to have it like aspirin. In the US and a lot of English-speaking countries and Europe, you need a prescription for this drug. And it's the frontline therapy for type 2 diabetes or high blood sugar. You can take tens of thousands, and people have taken tens of thousands of people who are on metformin for type 2 diabetes and looked at their overall health and their lifespan. And this fact that I'll tell you blows my mind. Type 2 diabetics that go on metformin, on average, live longer than people that don't have type 2 diabetes. And they're protected against diseases. So if you're susceptible to cancer or heart disease, frailty, those on metformin reduce their risk of those diseases, whereas those that don't take metformin, it increases over time. Well, it's a family of genes. We have 7 of these, what we call sirtuins, and we linked them to aging when I was a postdoc at MIT back in the 1990s. And what we were looking at as a group was what can make yeast cells live longer. And there was one mutation that led us to a gene called SIR2, SIR2, which stands for Silent Information Regulator number 2. And information is the key. But we'll get to that later. But this set of sirtuin genes, this family, has been shown in yeast and worms and flies, mice, and now humans to be a really important central regulator of longevity. We showed, now going back to 2005, that fasting activates the sirtuins, and later we showed exercise activates these genes. So a lot of the things that we're told by doctors to do to live longer and be healthier, we think acts through the sirtuins in concert with these other 2 sets of genes we just talked about. Yeah, and it's an important concept because most people think, when you run, your blood flows and clears out your arteries, and when you eat less, it's just good for you. What we've discovered is that these longevity genes, these 3 sets we've just mentioned, need to be either downregulated or upregulated in a certain way. How do you do that? These lifestyles, certain types of diet, when you eat, and exercise. Essentially, you want to trick your body into thinking that it's under threat of survival, adversity. You don't want it too much. You don't want to damage your body so that it can actually have the opposite effect. But you want to give it a little bit of fear, and it will have great results and give you payback for decades to come.
So what implications does this have for us? While we're just at the dawn of converting this research into tangible anti-aging treatments, there are encouraging approaches in the pipeline. Modifications in our lifestyle, like adopting a nutritious diet, engaging in regular physical activity, and managing stress effectively, can also exert a positive influence on these aging markers. The science unraveling the mystery of aging is intricate yet utterly fascinating. The research spearheaded by Dr. David Sinclair kindles optimism that we may someday be able to substantially prolong a healthy human lifespan. If you found this video enlightening, please give it a thumbs up and remember to subscribe to our channel for more intriguing insights into the science of aging and longevity. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the science of life.